Hi, Drew.
Hi, Anna.
What's wrong? You look puzzled.
Well, I had a dream last night.
We've been talking about dreams.
I know, but this one was really weird.
Okay.
I was dreaming that I was in bed, and in my room, there was a giant milkshake.
Okay.
And a giant donut.
I'm kind of hungry now. Okay, keep going.
And they were standing between me and the door. And I couldn't get out my room unless I drank all of the milkshake and ate the entire donut.
Oh, no. Did you do it?
Yeah, I did it. I'm here, aren't I?
Well, did it upset your tummy?
No, that's the thing. I woke up and now I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm kind of hungry too.
What do you think that dream means?
Well, I'm no dream interpreter, but I do think it means we should probably be driving to a milkshake restaurant right now.
That sounds like a good idea.
Or donuts. I know of like down the road, there's a donut place next to an ice cream shop.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to put that in the GPS. And
Good.
On our way, let's talk about our second part of Joseph, because guess what? He interprets dreams there.
You're right.
Yeah.
And the dreams are by somebody that has something to do with drinks and somebody that has something to do with bread, like donuts.
And they're in a position where they can't get out of where they are.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. So maybe that's what your dream was about.
Maybe it was all about today's Bible story.
Maybe, but I also want dessert. So let's go.
Let's go.
From the stories of Noah's Ark and Anna on the lawn, through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. Whether you're new to this or an avid Sunday schooler, we'll learn about the Bible just like church,
but even cooler.
And we take what we learn and we use what we find to go into the world and let the light of God shine.
Buckle up, kids.
Minivangelism. It's time to go Minivangelism. In faith we grow Minivangelism. Let's start the show.
Okay, so we're headed to the dessert stores now.
Yes.
But let's kind of recap what we went through last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have Joseph, we have his fancy coat, and his 11 brothers. And his 11 brothers do not like him. And it ended with them selling him into slavery. And so he ended up in Egypt. And while he's in Egypt, things go from bad to worse.
It's true.
So do you have a song that kind of can get us to where we are today?
Yeah. It's about where we find Joseph is actually not just in Egypt, but in jail in Egypt.
Right.
He got in trouble for something he didn't do, and now he's in jail.
Mm-hmm.
But then some people who are in jail with him start to have dreams.
Yeah.
And Joseph is the dreamer. In fact, he's a dream reader.
Ooh.
And that's the title of this week's song.
All right, let's go.
All right, here it is.
Das ist
Dream reader, dream. Joseph the dream reader. Joseph was in jail one night at the hands of Pharaoh, hoping God could get him out. Yes, this was his prayer. Oh, two prisoners woke him up with screams, asking him to read their dreams. A couple freaked out fellas, crying, Joseph, what can you tell us? Dream reader, dream. Joseph the dream reader. Said Joseph to the cup holder man, you're a lucky sleeper. You will one day be set free. Your dream is a keeper. But turning to the baker, said prepare to meet your maker. Both men were amazed, standing in a dreamy haze. Dream reader, went by, but then one night Pharaoh had a dream. Oh, 7 cows and ears of corn of the crop, they were the cream. Oh, but then the cows grew skinny and the corn shrank down to mini. The cupman heard his Pharaoh cry, and he said, I know just the guy. Dream reader, dream. Joseph the dream reader. They rushed and got Joe out of jail. Joseph was excited. Pharaoh said, please read my dream. Joe said, I'd be delighted. 7 years of plenty, 7 more with not a penny. Save the plenty up and then you'll survive the famine. Pharaoh said, and thanks to you, I'll make you my number 2. Dream reader, dream. Joseph the dream reader.
I really like that song.
Yeah, me too. It's like I did a slow song, kind of like you would have had it like a sock hop, but it tells a really wild story.
My socks don't hop. They leap.
That's good. Congratulations. But kids, you can ask your parents or ask the internet what a sock hop is.
Yeah.
It was an old dance in like the 50s.
Yeah, ask your grandparents what a sock hop was.
That'll work.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I kind of like the music sounded very dreamy.
Yeah.
Like dreamlike. So, good job on that one.
Thanks. It was fun.
So, yeah. So, Joseph, like you said, he ends up in jail for something that he didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he is actually like pretty important in the jail.
Right.
Like the guards end up liking this guy. And then 2 people get put into the jail, and one is a baker and one is a cupbearer. Can you tell us what a cupbearer is?
Yeah, it's he's probably somebody who's like in charge of anything that the pharaoh or the royal party wants to drink. So in charge of the wine or the other drinks or the milkshakes maybe.
Yeah.
But that would be like the baker is to bread and cake what the cupbearer is to wine and drink.
Yes.
So they're kind of covering the snacks, but they're very important because they have to make sure that everything is just like the pharaoh wants it.
Yeah.
And they both land in jail because at some point they did something to offend the pharaoh. So maybe there was a fly in the milkshake, or the donut was flat. I don't know. Or the donut didn't have a hole in it, and Pharaoh really wants that. But for whatever reason, they end up in prison. But they're there with Joseph. Mm-hmm. And one night, they both have dreams.
They do. The cupbearer imagines that there's like some vines growing, and he like squeezes the juice into the Pharaoh's cup. The baker imagines that there's baskets of bread on his head, and like the birds come and eat the bread. And these are weird dreams. They're like extremely vivid. And so they tell Joseph the dreams, and they're like, what do you think this means? And Joseph, he tells the cupbearer, like, hey, good news. You're about to get out of jail. Like, Pharaoh's going to understand that it was a mistake to put you in here. You're good. And to the baker, he's like, you also are going to leave jail, but you're leaving jail to be executed.
Yeah.
Which is not good news. And so those dreams come true.
They do.
And the cupbearer, Joseph's like, hey, you're going back to Pharaoh's court. I'm in jail. I don't belong here. Do you mind telling Pharaoh about me? And the cupbearer goes, yeah, sure. And he gets back to the palace, and he completely forgets about Joseph. But then Pharaoh starts having some weird dreams. He dreams that there's 7 ears of corn that are like really big and important and awesome and thriving. And then there's 7 bad ears of corn that are like shrunken and gross. And they eat the good corn. And then he dreams that there's like 7 cows that come up out of the river and they're big and fat and awesome. And then 7 little skinny cows come up out of the river and they eat the big cows. And the Pharaoh is really upset. And so he goes to his own dream interpreters and they don't know what it means. And so that's when the cupbearer goes, oh yeah, I remember there's a guy in jail. He's a Hebrew and he's really good at telling dreams. He actually predicted what happened to me and the baker. Go ask him. And Pharaoh's like, you know what? At this point, I need to know what's going on. So let's go get Joseph out of jail. And then what does Joseph do?
Joseph changes his clothes, shaves, cleans up, goes before Pharaoh and says, tell me your dream. And Pharaoh tells him the dream. And Joseph says, God has given you this dream to tell you that you're going to have 7 years of plenty with fat cows and fat ears of corn, and it's going to be delicious and wonderful. But then there's going to be 7 years of famine, where there's not enough food for everybody. So God has given you this dream so that when you have plenty, you can save it and survive the 7 years of famine.
Yeah.
And Pharaoh is very thankful that Joseph has interpreted this dream, very thankful to know what's about to happen, and puts Joseph in charge of managing the feast and the famine. So it makes him like the person in charge of storing the food and then distributing the food. Really makes him his right-hand man, his number 2.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And that's where our story is going to wrap up. But I am actually going to pull into this library right here because I need the Wi-Fi. Because our special guest kid host today, I'm actually going to be talking to her on the internet.
Oh, cool.
Because so we live in Virginia. She lives in New York.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we are going to talk to her on the internet today, and her name is June, and June is actually the one that gave us the idea for the Joseph story. So
That's
her
great.
and her mom sent us an email, and so I thought, you know what? If we're going to talk to anybody, let's talk to June.
Great. Have fun talking to June.
Okay, I will, and read up on the story.
Oh, yeah, I got to get ready.
Yeah, she seems like a smart kid, so.
Oh, no.
All right, I'll talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
Hello, June.
Hi.
I am so excited to be talking to you. Now, if it sounds, our podcast listeners, if it sounds a little bit different, it's because I'm talking to June on a computer. Because June, where do you live? What state do you live in?
I live in New York.
That is so far away because I'm all the way in Virginia. But the cool thing about the internet is that we can still talk to each other on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
All right. So June, the reason we want to talk to you is because June is the one that gave us the idea for this story. Her and her mom sent us an email and we just love this Bible story too. And we thought, you know what? If somebody's going to know how to do, or if somebody's going to be able to talk to us about this, it's going to be June. So are you ready to talk about it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we are talking today about Joseph's time in jail and his ability to interpret dreams. So, June, what are some I wonder questions that you have about this story?
One of my I wonder questions is scientifically what caused the famine?
Scientifically, what caused the famine? Ooh, that's a good question. What do you think?
Maybe there was something that covered or something that made the sun really, really, really bright, like hotter.
Oh, so you think there was like a drought? Oh, or like a heat wave. That's really good. I wonder if it was maybe like sometimes crops get like diseases. You know how like sometimes we can get diseases?
Yeah.
Ooh, so I wonder if maybe the crops got the diseases. But I like the sun because Egypt's kind of like the desert, yeah?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting. Have you ever like accidentally killed a plant?
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened?
It crumpled up. and
Oh
died.
yeah. Oh no. What did you forget to water it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a squirrel got into it.
Oh, so it was an outside plant?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a bunch of strawberries in our backyard in like a little strawberry garden, and we had to put netting up because the squirrels kept coming in and eating all our strawberries. Okay, well, did you have any other I wonder questions?
Yeah. Why would the king share his power?
Why did the king share his power? Hmm. I think I have an idea, but I want to hear your idea first.
Because he thought Joseph was so good and that God was with him and that he was like a chosen one from God to interpret dreams.
Yeah, that's really good. So he could like, it's almost like he could see God's gift in him. Ooh, that's a really good answer, June.
Thanks.
That's really, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a really good answer. Oh wow, you've see what I mean, folks? This girl knows this story. No wonder you brought it to the table. All right, what's your third I wonder?
Um, what gave Joseph the power to tell dreams?
What gave Joseph the power to tell dreams? Hmm. I think we may have already answered it, but what do you think?
Well, I don't know if um like how would God like transport some of his power to know things to Joseph?
Oh. I see. So what you're saying is like God has the ability to interpret dreams, and he has given Joseph this ability to interpret dreams. So when did that happen or how did that happen?
Yeah, like what made him so special.
Oh, ooh. I didn't know we were going to do Stump Miss Anna today in our interview. Dude, that's a really great question. What do you
And
think?
maybe God just liked the way he acted. Like maybe he was kind and
Mhm.
like he just liked him a lot.
Yeah. So what are some things in this story that like make you have big feelings? Like either make you feel happy or sad or mad or uncomfortable? Like what are some things in the story that make you have big feelings?
When he just randomly says that the cook is gonna get its head chopped off and body hung on a pole.
Yeah, that's intense. How does that make you feel?
Kind of weird
Hmm. What do you think that says about Pharaoh?
that he's not very nice, kind of.
That he's not a really good guy. Yeah, ooh, that's kind of scary. But the other guy gets out of jail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's kind of nice, but he's kind of not nice. What else makes you have big feelings? Do you have anything else that makes you have big feelings?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. That's okay. So on Many Evangelism, we like to talk about how um, God is in every story, right? Every story in the Bible tells us something about God. What do you think this story tells us about God, or where is God in the story?
Well, God is in Joseph.
Hmm.
God is watching over Egypt and warning people about what's going to happen in the next 14 years
Yeah. And why do you think God warned them?
because want, he probably didn't want them to suffer unexpectedly.
Yeah. So what does that say about God?
that he's very kind and
Yeah.
he loves us.
Yeah. And he looks out for us. Yeah. Even with Joseph, right? Like we talked about how Joseph had a promise that was given to him from God to be one of God's chosen people, right? So
Yeah.
even when he's in jail, God still kept his promise, didn't he? To like get him out of jail. And then he becomes the second in command of all of Egypt. That's huge. What do you think he wore as like the governor of Egypt? What kind of outfit do you think he had?
Like robes and rings and gold necklaces.
Do you think it was nicer than the coat that his brothers tore up?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do this podcast with my friend Pastor Drew, and Pastor Drew thinks he knows a lot about the Bible just because he has pastor in front of his name. So I like to play a little game called Stump Pastor Drew. And so many of our guest kid hosts have been able to stump him. So, June, do you want to try and stump Pastor Drew?
Yes.
Yes? You got some good ones for me today?
I think so.
All right, let's get him. Let's hit him with that first one.
How did Joseph get the prison guard to like him?
Oh, how did Joseph get the prison guards to like him?
Like, what did he do?
Hmm, that's a good one. It doesn't have like a real answer in the Bible, but we that doesn't matter because Pastor Drew hasn't used that excuse in a long time, so we can definitely stump him on that one. What do you, okay, so I have a question for you. If you were put in jail for something that you didn't do, because remember, Joseph got put in jail for something he didn't do. If you got put in jail for something that you didn't do, how do you think you would get the guards to like you?
Maybe not try to escape.
Oh, all right. So, what is your second Stump Pastor Drew question?
Was the king always that generous? Because like he gave all like half of his power away to only one tiny thing. And
Oh,
like was he a really good king? Or was it just that one time?
oh, I like that. So, was Pharaoh good or bad? Yeah, I don't know. But once again, that's a Stump Pastor Drew. Actually, I do have an answer for that. I think it's like no. I think Joseph was like you're right. Joseph was the exception because once again, he cut a guy's head off and put him on a pole, right?
Yeah.
The best dude. Okay, and then what is your third Stump Pastor Drew question?
Why did the Egyptians go from one Hebrew person being governor of all of them to being enslaved later in the Bible?
Oh, so you've read ahead. You know how this story ends. And yeah, it ends with the Egyptians enslaving the Hebrew people. So how did they go from like listening and following the commands of one to enslaving them all? That's a good question. That's a stumper right there. And you know what? The answer is in the Bible. It's in the beginning of Exodus, but it's a stumper. June, I think you've got this one in the bag. I'll let you know. Okay.
Okay.
And normally, Pastor Drew, like if he gets stumped, you get a free high five. So, because you live all the way in New York, and if you stump him, you can either get a video of him giving you a high five, or if you ever come visit Virginia, you can come to our church and get a high five. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Do you have any other stumpers? Are you good?
Yeah, that's all.
That's all. Okay. So we always like to end on a joke. Do you have a funny joke for us today?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Who conquered all the cheese in ancient Egypt?
Who conquered all the cheese in ancient Egypt? I don't know who.
Alexander the Greater.
have never heard that joke, and I'm going to use it. Like, I'm going to ask if people listen to Minivangelism, and if they say no, I'm using that joke. Do you mind if I steal it?
No.
That was a great joke. Top notch, June. Top notch. It was so nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming and being on Minivangelism. Enjoy the snow.
You too.
All right, bye.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
And I had such a good time talking with June. I got to see her mom for a little bit.
Nice. So the Wi-Fi was good?
Yeah, Wi-Fi was excellent. That's why we should support our public libraries. You get that free Wi-Fi.
There you go.
But she had a lot of really good things to say. And June, she's 9. And so, she kind of brings that like big kid thinking to the story.
That's great.
So she had some really cool I wonder questions. So here's the first I wonder question. Scientifically, and she made sure to say scientifically, what caused the famine?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm no meteorologist, but I think that often famine happens because of drought, because of a lack of rain. But if you ask me why there are long seasons or periods of lack of rain meteorologically, I have no idea.
Yeah.
The other day, one of my kids said, "Why is there wind?" and I did my best to say something, but it was I did not study meteorology, studied theology, so I can't help much there. But I also feel like in June's question, like that's a question we ask a lot, like when there is drought or famine or natural disasters. It's a question like, what's going on here? Like, how did this get caused? And either why didn't we see it coming or what can we do about it?
Yeah.
What's interesting about this story is, in this case, Joseph and Pharaoh, with God's help, they did see it coming.
Yeah.
So they were ready for whatever was going on scientifically or meteorologically.
Climate wise.
Yes. What was up with the weather? And so they had a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's cool. And June kind of had that same thought too. She thought like maybe there just wasn't enough water and it got too hot. I mean, Egypt has the Nile, so there is a lot of like water running through there, but it still gets hot
and
around there.
They kind of live or die by the Nile. If the Nile's running great, everything's good. If it's dry, then everything's in trouble.
And also sometimes like if there are too many bugs, they can eat all your plants.
I don't care for bugs.
I don't either. We also talked about maybe there was a squirrel infestation.
Yeah.
I told her about how the squirrels ate all our strawberries, so we had to build a fence around our strawberry patch.
Yeah. That's Virginian squirrels. Egyptian squirrels, I imagine, are a breed of their own.
Yeah. They were eating all the corn.
Yeah.
Okay. So her next I wonder question was, why would the king share his power? Especially with somebody that just got out of prison. Like, why would the king share his power with Joseph, who is a Hebrew? He's not from around there. He used to be a slave and a prisoner.
Yeah. Part of what I think of, there's a line that's both in the Bible and in Spider-Man that says, with much power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
And so Pharaoh has a lot of responsibility. But sometimes if you just like having the power, but you don't want to do the work, you get help with the work.
Yeah.
Either because you want the work to be done well or because you don't want to do it yourself. So you're going to share responsibility. And it makes sense if you want to stay in power that you give that responsibility to people that are wise and are going to make good decisions on your behalf.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think the Bible suggests about Joseph, that Pharaoh sees that Joseph knows stuff, that he's got wisdom. In fact, they say that the Pharaoh at one point says, clearly you have the spirit of Elohim. So Pharaoh even talks about like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Joseph, and says, clearly you've got a spirit that's on your side. And that's why I want you to be responsible for this.
Yeah.
So it goes well, and I think probably, so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And June said the same thing. She was like, Pharaoh could see that God was with Joseph. especially since he had this ability to interpret the dream. And so if God's sending the dream and he's sending a person that knows how to interpret the dream, then this guy's going to have the smarts and he's going to have God on his side to know how to handle it. And I think that's an important lesson for us too, that like, it's always okay to ask for help.
Yes.
Especially if you see or know someone that could do a better job. You know what I mean?
And I even think of times when like we're playing as a family and one of the kids wants to be in charge of what we're playing.
Yeah.
And they want the power to be in charge. But then when we start saying, well, am I supposed to do this or am I supposed to do this? And they're like, I don't want to be in charge anymore. So the power part sounds good, but the responsibilities part is difficult. And so I think you're right that really, I'm not so sure humans are designed to be in charge of everything.
No.
Actually, it makes more sense and goes better if we can ask for help.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Even the most powerful person in the land asked for help.
Right.
So that's it's important.
Yes.
All right. So her third question was what gave Joseph the power to tell dreams? Like, how did God transport that power to Joseph?
Yeah. That's cool. How does it happen in movies? Like if someone gets like superpowers, because like this is kind of Joseph's superpower.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I mean, spider bite.
Alien.
Alien. Radioactive waste.
Freak government experiment.
Freak government experiment. Yeah. I mean, Thor is just he's like a godlike character.
Yeah. So we have lots of different.
Or lots of money. In the case of Batman and Iron Man, you just got to have a lot of money.
Yeah. And so, what about in the Bible?
I mean, in the Bible, it always says that God gives us the power to do it. And I think that was June's question was, okay, but how does God do it? Does he like plug in an SD card? Like,
Right.
What does he do?
It's funny. How is one of the questions that the Bible answers least?
Yeah.
The Bible or perhaps God does not seem too concerned with us understanding how God works. We're always kind of wondering about that. But it seems to be God's business to know how it happens. Yeah. But our business to see it happening and to be a part of it.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would say from this story is Pharaoh does say Joseph has the spirit of Elohim. And the one way the Bible does talk about different powers happening or God giving people power is by the Spirit.
Yeah.
And even Joseph in today's story, when he's asked to interpret dreams, God is not, there's no angels. God's not a main character in this story, like as a person next to Joseph.
Right.
But the one place where God is mentioned is whenever Joseph is asked to interpret dreams, he says, God has the power to do this.
Yeah.
God is the one who's given you this dream. He kind of says, it's not just me that can do this. He tries to make it clear that it's God who is the source of dreams and the one who can help interpret them. So it doesn't necessarily answer the question of how, but when we see it happen, it's often God gives someone God's spirit.
Yeah.
And that spirit makes us able to do more than we can do on our own.
Yeah. And I think too, like God is our creator, right? And there's like multiple times in the Bible where it says like God knew you before you were even born, or God had a hand in making you, right? Like when you were in your mommy's tummy, right? He was there and he was working. And like part of me wonders if just like these gifts are just like knit into our DNA. You know what I mean? As God's like watching over you. I don't know. I think that's something.
I think that's definitely true. And goes back to early Genesis where humanity is made in the image of God. So there's something of God that is part of being a human.
Yeah. So I asked June if there was anything in the story that made her have big feelings. And the one thing that she said that gave her a big feeling was the baker.
Yeah.
Because he dies in a pretty gruesome way.
Yeah.
So off with his head.
Right.
And she didn't like that.
Yeah.
She said and it made her not think, you just said sometimes God likes people that aren't the best. Yeah. Pharaoh cut a guy's head off.
Yeah.
because he offended him.
Right.
And so, that just made her have a big feeling. And yeah, I don't know what you think of that.
I think we have a lot of Bible stories where bad things happen. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that's a good thing about the Bible, because in real life, bad things happen.
Yeah.
And we have big feelings, and part of Genesis especially. I mean, you think about Cain and Abel, Noah's Ark, like people die.
Yeah.
And I'm actually thankful that the Bible is honest about that and says this is the world God loves.
Right.
Even though it's a messed up place where people do messed up things or sad things happen, this is still the world that God loves.
Yeah. So I asked her, what does the story tell us about God? Because you even said, like, God's not really mentioned much in the whole story, but like in this section as well.
Right. We don't have like long prayers from Joseph.
No.
We don't have visits to any temples or anything like that.
No.
Yeah.
And like you said, no angels showing up and throwing down, like nothing like that. But what she said is that God is with Joseph and God is in Joseph. And God's going to be with us no matter where we are. Even if it's in like the worst possible place, God is still there with us. He's not in just a temple or in just a building or in just anywhere. Like he's with Joseph the whole time. And she also said that God was watching over Egypt. It told her that God was watching over Egypt and telling them about the famine so that they could get ready.
Wow.
And he cared for the people of Egypt. And I think that's important because at the time, people in Egypt did not worship God.
Right.
They worshiped other gods, but they did not worship the God.
Right.
And he still sent them a message. He still warned them that something bad was coming so that they could be cared for and so that they could be careful. And so, she just said, basically, God is kind. That was the overall takeaway, was that God is kind.
I think that's good.
And I loved, too, that even people that did not know who he was.
Absolutely.
He was still caring for them. And he showed them who he was through this.
And I love that insight from June. The Joseph's, let's see. Is it Joseph's great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather?
Great-grandfather.
Joseph's great-grandfather is the one, Abraham, who God spoke to and said, I'm going to make a family for you. And God also said, from your family, I'm going to bless other families, other nations. And so we see that happening here is from Abraham's descendants, Joseph, God is blessing people who don't even know this God or don't even talk to this God. And that will continue to be true as we read all the Bible stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some really good insights. Like June had some amazing insights about God, but you're also just kind of like adding these like really great observations and stuff. But
I feel like you never say nice things without something else. Is there a but coming?
Yeah. Well, no. And what that means is it's time to get stumped.
Oh. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I'm developing a pretty poor performance in Stump Pastor Drew.
Now, I will say this. You have not used the "it's not in the Bible" excuse for a few episodes.
How many of those do I have in my pocket for today?
1.
Okay.
You get 1 every 5 episodes.
Okay. I don't remember that being in the contract, but
It was. This
Okay.
this is what happens when you delegate power and you ask somebody to help you with something.
all right, let's go. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. How did Joseph get the prison guards to like him?
Is that in the Bible?
In a way, yeah. There's a specific line in the Bible that talks about the prison guards.
He brought them donuts.
No.
Oh.
What do you think? I'll give you one more.
He was nice to them.
No.
No?
No.
What is it?
It's that God gave him favor in the jailer's
Oh,
sight.
good. Yeah, that's a genuine stump. I don't know that I would have. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I
I
guess.
should have guessed, like, the answer is God.
Yes. So I guess the question was kind of a trick question because Joseph didn't get the jailers to like him.
Yeah.
It was the Spirit of God in Joseph
Nice.
that allowed him to. I asked June, like, okay, so I'm going to see if you can answer this question too. This is not a stump. This is just a thought experiment. If you went to jail for something you didn't do, how would you get the guards to like you?
That's a fun question. I would write them songs. Officer Jenkins is the coolest prison guard. Yeah, that's what I would do.
I suggested, I was like, would you make them something, like knit them a scarf or like bake them something? And she was like, no, that's kind of cringy. Her answer was, I would just like not try to escape.
Good.
I would just be a model prisoner.
Good for you, June.
Yeah.
You're going to have a long life.
Yeah, June knows. June would not Shawshank that prison. That was a joke for your parents. Okay. Here's our second question. Was the king always that kind and generous? Like when the way that he treated Joseph, was he always that kind and generous?
No.
Correct. Why is that?
Ask the baker. No, kings generally want to preserve power and stay in power, which means anytime they've got a threat, they got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And we're kind of led to believe something like that happened with the baker.
Yeah.
And that's why he got hanged.
Yeah.
So no. But also that's also true of every human person.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's kind all the time.
Yeah. She did ask though, like, was Joseph the first person to ever get that like number 2 spot? Or was this like a position that was like just created for Joseph?
Oh, that's cool. Well, he is kind of like set in, he's kind of like the deputy secretary of disaster response, you know, like, it is particularly because of the coming famine that Joseph is put in charge. But yeah, that's a good I wonder.
Yeah, that's a really good I wonder. All right, her third I wonder. And
this is a stump.
Oh, sorry, it's great. Her third stump. You could have gotten out of it, bud.
I know.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit in the Bible.
Cheating.
Well, no.
Okay.
Moses ends up leading the Hebrew people out of slavery in Egypt.
Yes.
So she wants to know, how did the Hebrew people go from having one of their own as second in command in Egypt to being slaves in Egypt? How did they go from being Jacob's family to slaves?
Well, I feel like I could answer this, or I could just say, listen to our next episode.
Well, I'm not saying like, how did they end up in Egypt? How did they become slaves in Egypt?
They were fruitful and multiplied. We're told in the next book of the Bible, in Exodus, that a new Pharaoh comes to town. And what that Pharaoh notices is that these Hebrews are numerous. There's a lot of them. So next week we'll hear about what happens next with Joseph and, spoiler alert, his brothers. But they end up staying in Egypt for a long time and raising families. And by the time the next Pharaoh gets there, the Pharaoh says, there's too many of them. They're a threat to my power.
Yeah.
And that Pharaoh makes them slaves in Egypt. So that's how there becomes not just one Hebrew, one person who worships the true God there, but thousands and thousands. And that's also how they become a threat and therefore are enslaved.
Yeah. All right. So 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Or 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah.
So good job.
Thank you.
Kind of.
I keep getting stumped at least once. And I want to ask our audience, I hope that God will give me favor in your sight. Even though I'm a pastor and supposed to know stuff. Clearly, pastors don't know all of it.
I think that it's less about like how much you know about the Bible and just like how smart these kids are. And they figured out like, oh, if I circumvent the Bible.
Right. Don't just pay attention to the major parts of the story.
No, you need to pay attention to musicals. You need to pay attention to marine biology.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, I hope everybody had fun at my expense.
Yes. And I told June that since she lives so far away, either when she visits Virginia, you can give her a high five, or we can send her a video of you giving her a high five.
I can mail her a high five. That's no problem.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got her address. I'll send
Great.
it. All right. Well, thank you so much, June, for the great conversation and for the great questions and stump Pastor Drew questions and all of those things. So, do you have anything else you want to add about Joseph and his dreams?
Well, I'm curious if there are parts of the story that give you big feelings. Good ones or bad ones, question ones. Anything we haven't gotten to?
I think I do have a big feeling, and that is when Joseph gets named number 2 in all the land.
Mm-hmm.
The person that put him in jail for something he didn't do, like, I wonder how that person felt.
Oh, yeah.
That's my big I wonder is like, did Joseph be like, ha, I got
Yeah.
you.
You should write that comic book
Yeah.
of how that played out.
Or
That's
did
good.
he get sent to jail? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
what happened?
Right.
What about you?
I think the only other thing I want to be able to add is, again, how many parts of this story remind us of Jesus, or how many parts of Jesus' story remind us of this story. Again, Jesus is somebody who, like Joseph, things don't go well for Jesus.
Right.
They both end up down and out. But part of what the story shows us is that even though you may be down and out, God's plan is what is ultimately going to make the decision about what happens here.
Yeah.
That God is still with you, and if the Spirit of God is with you, then it's not just down and out. It is always going to end up being kind of up and in the grace of God, in the life of God, and so we see that starting to happen now in Joseph's life, and in Jesus' life, it happens for everybody.
Yeah.
I also think it's kind of interesting that it's the food and drink in the story is like bread and wine, which always reminds us of the Last Supper and the sacrament of communion. And there's kind of something of baptism here too, because we say in baptism we go down in the water and then are brought up to be children of God, which is different than being second in command to Pharaoh. But it is being given power and responsibility to be one of God's children in the world, one of God's people. But all of that power and responsibility that's given to us in baptism, part of the point of baptism is we do not bear that power and responsibility alone. That just like Joseph said, it's not me that can do this magical stuff with dreams. It is God who handles the dreams, God who is telling this story. Mm-hmm. And same for us is it's not just us that's going through life and trying to be a force for good. It is God's Spirit in us that we trust in, that will ultimately make of our life whatever our life will be.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So this week, if you drink any juice
Yes.
or if you eat some bread, remember the story.
That's right.
Or if you have any weird dreams, remember the story.
Yeah, and tell someone about them.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe you'll get a weird interpretation.
Or maybe you'll go stop for milkshakes and donuts.
Speaking of, we're here. So let's go get a snack. You want to?
I want to.
Okay, how about you go order the milkshakes from the ice cream shop? I'll go order the donuts.
Okay, good.
All right, let's get off this episode so that way we can write our orders down.
Do it.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. And parents, before we leave, don't forget that we have a special companion episode called The Driver's Seat, where we talk about the same story without the kids in the car. If you want to send us an email, if you have any ideas like June did, if you want to send us an email, you can email us at minivangelism@gmail.com. Or if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Minivangelism. And we are a ministry of Grace United Methodist Church in Manassas, Virginia. If you live in the Northern Virginia area and you want to come give us a check out, check us out and you're looking for a place to worship, you can find more info at umcgrace.org. All right, I've got my order ready.
Me too.
All right, let's go. Bye.
Bye.
Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are hosted by Anna Burrell and Drew Colby. Theme song written by David Burrell and produced by Evan Setzer. The theme song was performed by David Burrell, Drew Colby, and Evan Setzer. Podcast, sound design, and editing done by David Burrell. Minivangelism and the Driver's Seat are a ministry of Grace United Methodist Church in Manassas, Virginia. For more information, check out umcgrace.org.
won't run